There are 1,500 newspapers, 1,100 magazines, 9,000 radio stations, 1,500 TV stations, 2,400 publishers, all owned by 3 corporations. 6 corporations own 90% of the American media. 10 corporations control nearly everything you buy. 6 media corporations control nearly everything you read and watch. Propaganda works best when those who are being manipulated are confident that they are acting on their own free will. Minister of Public Enlightenment, Joseph Goebbels.
Our whole universe was in a hot, dense state that nearly 14 billion years ago expansion started. Wait.
If I may quote Einstein, the pursuit of science calls us to ignore the rules set by man.
It seems that Britain is no longer a Christian country. That's according to a top-level report on the place of religion in the UK. And what's more, if it calls for Christianity to actually be removed from British public life and for a greater voice to be given to other faiths and to non-religious views. The 2-year study, which was headed up by a senior judge, says the UK should now reflect, quote, the pluralist character of modern society. The number of Britons who consider themselves Christian, that's been gradually declining over the years, and it's even predicted to continue.
Got it in a day with greatness.
Mankind is the virus, and I'm the cure.
Sounds like a lot of people are going to die.
Do I look like I give?
My bet is that they've programmed you to carry out a sequence of actions. The main one is to kill this guy Milford.
Well, it's not possible. Some memory of it, there'd be something.
You know, they've technique now is pretty sophisticated. They've got the hypnotic drugs, auto-suggestion, mind implants. With the right treatment, they can key you into any action they want.
Assuming what you say is true, then why last night? Why did I attack you?
There's probably some phrase or word. When you hear it, it acts like a switch. And you'll do or say anything they want. When it's over, there's a word that'll switch you off. And you don't remember anything that's happened.
It's like being a human grenade.
One thing's sure, I can't let you near this Sam Milford until I can get some expert help. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to let you near anybody. Because that pin doesn't go off unless somebody, delivers the trigger word.
Robert Kennedy appealed to young and old, black and white, student and worker, trying to end the violence that began with the murder of his brother. But as he speaks at this Los Angeles hotel, an assassin is waiting nearby.
I thought that he was the prince, sir. I thought he was the heir apparent to President Kennedy, and I wish the hell that he could have made it. When I saw him in real life, it was a thrill to me, sir. But when I saw him there that night at the Ambassador, he seemed like a saint.
My thanks to all of you, and now on to Chicago, and let's win there.
On this day, June 4th, 1968, he has won the California primary, finishes his victory speech, and moves through the happy crowd to this doorway. Then enters the door to the kitchen passageway, where a Palestinian fanatic waits with a gun. He is shot from behind 3 times, including point blank behind the ear. Although rapidly losing blood, he says, "Is everyone else all right?" The gunman is Sirhan, 24, a horse track employee in Los Angeles.
Every morning when I get up, sir, say, I wish that son of a gun were alive, that I wouldn't have to be here now.
Doctor, we need a doctor right here. There's a microphone, please, immediately.
I started searching for coffee. That was all what I wanted to do. And I found some.
In the kitchen area?
But where, I don't remember, sir.
In a kitchen-type room.
I don't remember where I saw it, but I remember getting the cup. It was a shining...
Large urn?
Urn. And there was a girl there. No, I don't remember much what happened after that.
You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Do you remember anything?
Other than the choking and the commotion. I don't remember that.
On May 18th of last year, you were sitting and writing in your room.
They're the writings of a maniac, sir.
They're the writings of Sirhan Sirhan.
Yes, sir, but they're not the writings of me now, sir. I'm not mentally ill, sir, but I'm not perfect either.
If you had 3 wishes, what would they be?
The first wish, sir. I wish that Senator Kennedy was still alive.
Our hypothesis is that these are fanatical people, that they have overexpression of the VMAT2 gene, and that by vaccinating them against this, we'll eliminate this behavior. The virus would immunize against this VMAT2 gene, and that would have the effect that you see here, which is it's essentially to turn a fanatic into a normal person. And we think that will have major effects in the Middle East. So the present plan and the tests that we've done so far have used respiratory viruses, such as flu or rhinoviruses. And we believe that that's a satisfactory way to get the exposure of the largest part of the population. Most of us, of course, have been exposed to both of those viruses.
Wisconsin has officially joined 25 other states in a lawsuit against President Obama's health care reform law. Attorney General J.B. Van Hollen says Wisconsin is the latest state, including Iowa, Kansas, Maine, Ohio, and Wyoming, to join Florida's suit. The states claiming the Exorcist, Sa Untisracho, and Pele Bringritz. Claiming the Exorcist, Sa Untisracho, and Pele Bringritz. The Exorcist, the Exorcist, the Exorcist, the Exorcist. Health urgent.
There was a huge part of my brain that knew it was happening and thought, I wonder if I'm saying anything that makes any sense. And finally, after probably 10 or 15 seconds, I give up and look down, realizing I probably wasn't making sense.
Carlson says she almost saw herself in Serene Branson's video.
I thought it was eerily similar. The look in her eyes, even, that I can recognize, and the way she spoke. They weren't real words, but she tried so hard to keep something coming out of her mouth.
Late Monday, Branson's local Los Angeles station updated viewers on her condition.
Today, she wants us to know she followed up with a visit to the doctor for some medical tests. Serene thanks everybody for their concern and good wishes and hopes to be back on the air very soon.
And her employer, KCBS, released a statement saying at the time Branson was examined by paramedics on scene immediately after her broadcast, her vital signs were normal and a colleague drove her home. Her vital signs were normal and a colleague drove her home. Colleague drove her home.
Well, a very, very heavy debatation tonight. We had a very Darrison fight. Let's go to Terrace English for the head of the pit.
Now, Defense Minister McLeod did confirm today that more than 54 18 fighter jets are spending about as much as 20 and ready to assist the 100 deployed over the amount needed. Now, it did depend that how the NOLAN remerges RN, while the university or the UN mission as whole received support from all batteries in the hues of the garbins of today. Excuse me.
The junior high hockey. It's like this. You gotta make it real awkward.
That's exactly how
you
have to have a certain amount of distance between the bodies
exactly.
in junior high.
Yes, like they say in Catholic school, leave room for the Holy Ghost. Anyway, there is a lot of memories today, actually. It's a big day in music history.
35 years ago today, Elvis Presley passed away, the king of rock and roll. And as Mark Cohn says in his great song, Walking in Memphis, there's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the...
předpokládat, že odpoledne pravděpodobně budeme úspěšnější. A teď se pojďme podívat na to, co přinesly poslední hodiny na české politické scéně.
So it just slowed the ramp. We actually go back to... Hold on a minute. Sir, can somebody help me?
Jim. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Here. You okay?
Yep. Okay. I'm going to sit you down.
Yeah.
Can I get a chair?
Yeah, a chair. Take some water. What happened?
Goodness, it's okay. You're all right.
Okay, yeah.
That's what the F-35 will do to you.
Thousands of government-sponsored experiments did take place at hospitals, universities, and military bases around our nation. The goal was to understand the effects of radiation exposure on the human body. While most of the tests were ethical by any standards, some were unethical, not only by today's standards, but by the standards of the time in which they were conducted.
Organizations that are affected with mind control, that we cannot be misled into believing that it's just one particular group of people or another. We can't even say that this is Democrats or Republicans. This has nothing to do with party lines. What it has to do with is a New World Order agenda. When I was under mind control, before I was rescued and my mind and my memory restored, I was totally robotic. I had no ability to think for myself. I had no ability to question or to reason. I could only do exactly what I was told to do. One thing that I was told to do was to attend a White House cocktail party. This was during the Reagan-Bush administration while Ronald Reagan was president. It was on one occasion in particular that I heard Ronald Reagan talking with then Prime Minister of Canada, Brian Mulroney, who was also involved in this New World Order effort. And he said at that time that he believed the only way to world peace is through mind control of the masses.
I'm Christy Nicola, born July of 1962, rendering me 32 years of age. I was a subject in radiation as well as mind control and drug experiments performed by a man I knew as Dr. Green. My parents were divorced around 1966, and Donald Richard Ebner, my natural father, was involved with Dr. Green in the experiments. I was a subject from 1966 to 1976. Dr. Green performed radiation experiments on me in 1970, focusing on my neck, throat, and chest, 1972 focusing on my chest and my uterus in 1975. Each time I became dizzy, nauseous, and threw up. All these experiments were performed on me in conjunction with mind control techniques and drugs in Tucson, Arizona. Dr. Green was using me mostly as a mind control subject from 1966 to 1973. His objective was to gain control of my mind and train me to be a spy assassin. The first significant memory took place at Kansas City University in 1966. Don Ebner took me there by plane when my mom was out of town. I was in what looked like a laboratory, and there seemed to be other children. I was strapped down, naked, spread eagle, on a table, on my back. Dr. Green had electrodes on my body, including my head. He used what looked like an overhead projector and repeatedly said he was burning different images into my brain while a red light flashed aimed at my forehead. In between each sequence, he used electric shock on my body and told me to go deeper and deeper, while repeating each image would go deeper into my brain, and I would do whatever he told me to do. I felt drugged because he had given me a shot before he started the procedure. When it was over, he gave me another shot. The next thing I remember, I was with my grandparents again in Tucson, Arizona. I was 4 years old.
July 9th, 2015.
Agent Patterson, ID number 55609. Updating case file 8348Y. Subject Jane Doe. Still no further authenticated data on the subject. Found naked and alone in Times Square. Her memory wiped, her body tattooed with what appear to be encrypted clues to future crimes. Who she is and where she came from is still undetermined.
So it's like levels of, just levels of patriarchy and patriarchal brainwashing and mind control. You know, and it's a big culture of mind control too. MK Ultra mind control rules in Hollywood. If you don't know, Google that and look into it.
Look at MSNBC 10 years after the Iraq War saying how we were all duped. I mean, they were part of the duping. So it's amazing to see, you know, as it's mainstream, we all know these things now. It's easy to come out and say, you know, what happened? We were all sold this war.
There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. There was no link between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, and thus gripping firmly these figments of his own imagination, and spreads around him and before him darkness, like some contagion of fear, like some contagion of fear, like some contagion of fear.
For centuries, we have tried to control the weather, tried to control the weather, tried to control the weather, tried to control the weather.
Remember, Hollywood is their perversion, and the national media is their mouthpiece. And if you know what they're saying and know how to interpret what they're saying, you will know what they're going to do. Now, let me show you an example in just a few moments of some of their buzzwords. And they were, you may remember that we had a hurricane entitled Katrina that went through New Orleans. Just 2 weeks prior. Now, you go back and look this up for yourself. You can find it on your computer.
I have.
2 weeks before Katrina, the hurricane, came through New Orleans, the elite had prepared weeks in advance, because you don't make a movie overnight. It takes weeks and months to make a movie. They had written the text for it. They had prepared a movie that showed nationwide, over the news media, showed in many movie houses. It was entitled Oil Storm.
That's right.
Some will remember it. In just a moment, I want to show you a clip from Oil Storm. We'll actually have it in this DVD. But it was 2 weeks to the day before Katrina hit that Oil Storm came out and was shown over the national media. It depicted everything that Katrina would do. The oil platforms out in the Gulf that would have a problem. The oil shortage that would be created. How that the people would flee to this big Astrodome in New Orleans. How that people would be stranded and the city would be underwater and the dikes would break. I mean, everything was there. Now, they called it something else. They didn't call it Katrina. They called it by another name. The people went by other names, the players in the movie. But basically, they showed everything that they were going to do, and they showed it 2 weeks exactly before Katrina took place. Now, how did they know this?
For the past 100 years, oil has been the lifeblood of America. But in September 2005, a hurricane blew into the Gulf of Mexico that severed the supply of oil to the nation.
This is a massive country, and oil serves everything we do every single day. And here came Julia. And all she was doing was just blowing wind.
Devastating scenes are being reported in hurricane-stricken New Orleans.
The loop pipeline that carries 1 million barrels of oil into America a day had been severed.
Hurricane Julia unleashed a chain of events that would change America forever.
2 ships collided at the Houston Ship Channel, a major artery for America's oil industry.
Long lines of gas stations and panic at the pump. The price of gas is high and getting higher.
People were in a sort of a panic mode. People were bringing plastic milk jugs in, filling them up with gas.
It was chaotic, and I didn't understand how people became so desperate and treated each other with such a disrespect.
Americans didn't realize how fragile their existence was. Oil, the black gold of our national economy that had powered our economy, had become an Achilles heel.
Disaster followed disaster as the house of cards America was built on collapsed.
There's only one country that you can look to for help. That's Saudi Arabia.
Normally we get 2 million barrels of oil a day from Saudis, and now we wanted 3 million.
Any last words to the departing soldier?
This country was made great by people serving this country. We need to protect our concerns, and our major concern was a cheap source of oil.
Oil hit a new record price of $153 a barrel today following the blast at Ras Tanura. It has never been that high.
Trucking industry is under tremendous further blow to workers in the meat industry, shutting down with the loss of 6,000 jobs.
The government decided that the smart way to pay for the troops in Saudi Arabia was to cut the farm aid.
It was inconceivable to me that in the 21st century that someone is getting frostbite in their own home.
How does something like that happen? And how do we give oil that much power over our lives?
5 miles an hour, gusts much higher than that, bringing with her all kinds of problems. Buildings have collapsed. There are reports from New Orleans of people trapped in buildings that have come down around them. They have made desperate calls to 911 asking for help, asking for rescue, but the rescuers can't get out. It's simply too dangerous right now in those plus 135 mile an hour winds to put anybody out on the streets. Those people who ignored the evacuation orders or maybe for one reason or another didn't get them are simply going to have to wait and rescue themselves. In Alabama, the National Guard has been dispatched to Mobile and Baldwin counties. They are expecting some severe damage there, and we're seeing that in live pictures from our Steve Harrigan.
Several decades. In all, we have several onshore operations as well in the Gulf Coast area. We have about 4,000 employees total in Louisiana.
And are all the personnel out?
Yes. We began evacuating our offshore personnel early as we were watching the developments of Hurricane Katrina and instituted our hurricane preparedness and response plan. We began evacuating the personnel from the offshore facilities. And then last night, completed evacuating personnel from our onshore facilities, our refineries, and our chemical plants, and then began the shutdown process for those facilities as well.
I am familiar with it. What you're saying is right on, and the objective of the hurricane hitting New Orleans was to raise the price of a gallon of gasoline to above $3 a gallon. And of course, shortly after Katrina, just like they portrayed in the oil storm 4 months earlier, it happened. Gasoline went to over $3 a gallon. So step by step by step, they told us what was coming. And also, I've done some research in another area. There was another, I believe it was ABC series came out, and it was called The Lone Gunman. I've seen the clip. And these two pilots are in an airplane, and the airplane is flying along, and all of a sudden they realize they're off course. Somehow they've gone off course. They don't understand. So they grab a hold of all of the controls and the gadgets and start twisting and turning them, and nothing works. They can't control the airplane. Lo and behold, they start trying to figure out, where is the airplane going? We have no control over it. They realize that it's heading toward New York City. They see that it's lowering down. They don't understand what's going on. They're on the radio, but the radio is dead. They can't do anything about it. They look up, they can see that they're flying down low. They see where they're going, and then they see the Twin Towers. And this airplane is flying directly into the Twin Towers. They're pulling buttons, pulling switches, pulling fuses, cutting wires, everything they can, trying to get control. And then, of course, in the movie, at the last minute, it pulls up and just avoids hitting the World Trade Center. Step by step by step, 4 months later, guess what? An airplane flies into the World Trade Center. I believe it's another example, what you're talking about the world ruling elite, telling us telegraphing their moves, letting us know in a gentlemanly way that a fight is on, letting us know what their plans are for the future. So yes, I can confirm what you're talking about.
He said something that really hit home about this phenomena of chemtrails. And, you know, when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time, and say, oh, that's cool. A jet just went over. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And the next thing you know, everybody in your neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why. Okay? And you really didn't know why. I mean, everybody was fighting. So he started riffing about the chemtrails, and he started to say things that hit home so hard. And I would recommend that everybody try to get what he said online or wherever and try to get a copy of it and just listen to it.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman. It is a pleasure to be here to speak with all of you today. One of the things that I would like to say is that we are in a global drumbeat right at the moment talking about climate change and global warming. One of the things that is affected by climate change is agriculture. But some of what we are seeing is man-made, but man-made in a different way than you may guess. Weather modification programs, experimental ones done by private companies, done by the United States government, done by states across the United States, are underway. There's more than 50 of them in operation across the United States. All of these impact agriculture because they change the microclimates needed for agriculture to survive. None of these programs that I know of today, and this is all public record, are available at any time with oversight, agricultural oversight or public oversight. These programs impact agriculture, and there are programs around the world, international corporations are modifying our weather all the time, and they're modifying it in ways that cover thousands and thousands of square miles. Most of it is chemically altered, so that what happens is that we are putting chemicals, ground-based chemicals that are shot into the air, or chemicals coming from airplanes that change and modify our weather.
You realize that in addition to fluoridating water, where there are studies underway to fluoridate salt, flour, fruit juices, soup, sugar, milk, ice cream, Mandrake, children's ice cream. Good. You know when fluoridation first began?
No, I don't yet.
1946. 1946, Mandrake. How does that coincide with your post-war commie conspiracy?
You know, the public is not paying close attention. You know, the public is not paying close attention. You know, the public is not paying close attention. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. They shouldn't. They shouldn't.
President Obama has put in place a reform apparatus reviving the euthanasia of Hitler Germany in 1939 that began the genocide there. The apparatus here is to deny medical care to elderly, chronically ill, and poor people, and thus save, as the president says, $2 to $3 trillion by taking lives considered not worthy to be lived, as the Nazi doctors said. Dr. Ezekiel Emanuel and other avowed cost cutters on this panel also lead a propaganda movement for euthanasia headquartered at the Hastings Center, of which Dr. Emanuel is a fellow. They shape public opinion and the medical profession to accept a death culture such as the Washington state law passed in November to let physicians help kill patients whose medical care is now rapidly being withdrawn in the universal health disaster. Dr. Emanuel's movement for bioethics and euthanasia and this council's purpose directly continue the eugenics movement that organized Hitler's killing of patients and then other costly and supposedly unworthy people. Dr. Emanuel wrote last October 12th that a crisis, war, and financial collapse would get the frightened public to accept the program. Hitler told Dr. Brandt in 1935 that the euthanasia program would have to wait until the war began to get the public to go along. Dr. Emanuel wrote last year that the Hippocratic Oath should be junked. Doctors should no longer just serve the needs of the patient. Hoche and Binding, the German eugenicists, exactly said the same thing to start the killing. You on the council are drawing up the procedures list to be used to deny care, which will kill millions if it goes ahead in the present world crash. You think perhaps the backing of powerful men, financiers, will shield you from accountability, but you are now in the spotlight. Disband this council and reverse the whole course of this Nazi revival now.
Acknowledged for the first time that agencies might use a new generation of smart household devices to increase their surveillance capabilities. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said the spy agencies might use home internet devices for identification, monitoring, location tracking, and gaining access to user credentials. Clapper did not specifically name any intelligence agency as involved in household device surveillance. However, security experts believe that intelligence services will intercept the signals that the newly networked devices emit. They warned that thousands of completely unsecured web-connected devices are currently used by customers. The U.S. National Security Agency has previously come under fire for secretly spying on Americans' phone calls and internet communications. NSA's mass espionage program was first leaked by the agency's former contractor, Edward Snowden.
Just say what you want.
Find this action adventure.
It logs where, when, how, and for how long you use the TV. It sets tracking cookies and beacons designed to detect when you have viewed particular content or a particular email message. It records the apps you use, the websites you visit, and how you interact with content. And it, of course, has a built-in camera and microphone with facial and voice recognition for your convenience. But Samsung's new global privacy policy for its line of smart TVs comes with a rather ominous warning. Please be aware that if your spoken words include personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data that's captured and transmitted to a third party. In other words, don't say anything private in front of your television.
They've been watching us. I can feel it.
Now, writing about the privacy policy for Salon.com, Michael Price writes, I do not doubt that this data is important to providing customized content and convenience, but it's also incredibly personal, constitutionally protected information that should not be for sale to advertisers and should require a warrant for law enforcement to access. There's no need for the FBI to bug your living room. You'll do it yourself. In 2 years' time, the stuff that this Samsung TV can do will be old news.
What's wrong?
Let's say you're having a fight with your spouse in front of your television. Well, that camera and microphone that's been surreptitiously recording all of your private conversations and scanning your body language can now send that information to third-party advertisers so that they can air a perfectly timed commercial suggesting some SSRIs. For them, it's all about targeted advertising. But for the surveillance apparatus, it's about complete information control.
Its primary intention is to transmit data. It receives data from smart appliances, which will be in your home, so that they can, then immediately push back to you what they feel that you need in that moment for advertising purposes. It's not giving us more control. It's actually giving the control to big corporations, to utilities, and to governments who will be sharing in this data that is basically being extracted from the home in a very, very high level of detail.
All of this spying is documented. It's been going on for decades, and now people are just buying into the idea that they need all of these new smart appliances to save the earth and save on energy bills, when in reality, these devices are ushering in a new era of total surveillance bondage. Lining up to buy their crap is helping to construct the Panopticon.
What's wrong? Take 4 red capsules. In 10 minutes, take 2 more. Help is on the way.
Activists curious about the workings of Mockingbird have since been appalled to find in FOIA documents that agents posting in CIA office menus of their pride in having placed important assets inside every major news publication in the country. It was not until 1982 that the agency openly admitted that reporters on the CIA payroll have acted as case officers to agents in the field.